balls. I'm just, sorry. I gotta get going. I don't want to indulge myself too much here. Let's go. Get cold. We've had food, we've had drinks. We're good. I gotta be a little disciplined, because it does get. We've had a brilliant time out here. Oh, I've got a breath. That's good. I've had a brilliant time, having a blessed day. The camera cuts me off sometimes. I don't even know if that's working. Is that working? Yeah, okay. Let's have a little brownie. Thanks, Mom. There we go. Talking about all this trauma, my shoulder's starting to get a little stiff. So speaking of the psychosomatic, just saying that medically you can say what you want. My body is very old and is very creative. My body found a way, much as it found a way to descend my testicles, if only I might be creative enough to imagine, to give women a reason not to kick me in the balls. I could say, hey, my balls are, please stop talking the way you're talking. I've had women hurt my balls by the way they're talking. If you're a man, have you ever felt like one day your balls just hurt? And you're like, fuck, that's not a pain you usually feel. And it just comes and goes. It'll help you if you acknowledge who abusive female you've talked to that day. Has somebody broken your law? The women can speak ill to your blood. We say someone can chill your blood. What are we really saying? Someone can speak ill to your blood. Have all the medical, I'm glad, great. I worship the medical system, right? Do what you can. Really, sometimes we got to protect ourselves from you, but you got to protect yourself from me, because knowledge in medicine is growing, which means it's got to have a certain amount of ignorance to make it worth something to all of us. So, but psychosomatic has to do with the creativity in your blood, because your blood is the thing that's really getting poisoned and hurt by the world. Your blood is your life. It's your life's blood, right? Before your brain is your brain, before your heart is your heart, it's blood from a stone. Before your kidneys are kidneys, before that beautiful dick in your hairy palms becomes a beautiful hard dick that's like making you swim of sticking it into some lucky woman's warm, wet pussy who is hopefully consented, and hopefully you have as well. And not just because she invited you over dinner and started stroking your cock at some point and sticking her tongue down your throat. That's not really consent, guys. Okay? You might think that's a good time. I don't. I consider it rape. I'm not saying hurt women. I'm not saying they know what they're doing. You've got to know what you're doing. We've all got to be responsible, right? Because women have a certain deference in the world. They can be a certain kind of crazy, and you can be really creeped out by something they've assumed is normal. And you may be a complete pussy for saying so, but you're allowed to get up and walk away and say, they're going to be mad. They might be really, really mad because they're horny. And you're kind of saying you don't like them. And that's not what you're saying, honey. I'm just saying that if we engage in that wonderful, pleasurable thing that couples can do to become truly more intimate, I'd like to be consulted about it first. Because otherwise I think it augurs ill for the future of our fucking family. You know? And she'll be like, wow, you're a very thoughtful man. Sure, put the rod of El Rod on. I'll put my underwear back on and my manners back into my mouth. Because God knows your cock isn't going to go there ever again. And you're like, oh, don't be that way. Well, you had your chance. She's going to be a little ball breaking. Now that's ball breaking behavior. And so you go away and you're like, no, you have blue balls. But they hurt in that deeper way, because women can afflict your blood. Blood is very creative. Women are very creative. Guess what? They create your babies in their womb. They menstruate. That's a form of creation, right? We don't talk about that because we're stupid morons. Yes, women are sacred. Their menstrual cycle is sacred. They're creating flesh. Endometriosis is sacred. It's just a little too much sacred creation at the wrong place at the wrong time, which is basically pure evil. Endometriosis can help us solve all the world's problems, right? Where are women being tasked that eliminate them or put them in the wrong place at the wrong time, to a world that can't change how it's going to behave. You just have to make sure you're never in the wrong place at the wrong time, right? Because that's evil, isn't it? And if you see evil, it could be something good, but it's like, oh, that's the wrong time for that. You know, if your son speaks in a loud voice, Daddy, I have to go shit now, in the restaurant, you're like, son, that's a little evil, because, you know, wrong place and time. Use your inside voice. That was evil. The people around you think you're a demon, and they want you to go to hell. Oh, sorry, Daddy. Right? And that's, you know, if we tell children right, we think about evil, then, hey, they develop pretty good standards, don't they? They're like, wow, this respect thing is pretty good. That's really where the ethics comes from. And as little as you can tell them what to do is good. So instead, you go to the restaurant for the first time and say, okay, everyone, what did Daddy teach you? We use our inside voices. What happens when you feel excited and you really want to tell me something, because if you don't, you're going to crap yourself? Oh, we pardon ourselves and go to the bathroom. That's right. Now, how to practice that? 100 times, Daddy. Okay, now what are you going to do tonight? Exactly what you taught us to. And then you're ordering the steak tartare. He's like, Daddy, I gotta go shit now. In fact, my body already started with and everyone around can smell what happened, and you're like, practice patience. I don't hit children. I don't hit children. My children, they're just having an off day. So you're responsible for teaching them, right? And if you treat them well, and you have a nice home, and you're lucky to have a nice partner, and you figured things out, and you're figured things out in a good way in life, that'll probably be easy. You'll probably work harder than you need to, because your children will just emulate your energy, the way you approach problems and conflict. Wow. Dad measures out his thoughts and his words. And then one day you come into the woodshed and he's like, you motherfucking Jesus Christ, you soiled diaper Christian sacrifice of children out of the womb of a fucking state whore motherfucker. And you're like, Daddy, you're amazing. You're my... Reading that note I left you. Son, we need to talk. Children should be wicked. I can't believe, like, you'll see wickedness come out of all children, so you got to give them something to hate. It'll help bond you. I mean, religions do it anyway, so I figure teach your children to hate. Teach them to hate the right things, right? You say, you're going to hate it when you crap yourself. You're going to hate it, right? Hate inspires more education than love, right? If you teach your children to learn things out of love, they're going to become complete criminals, okay? Love is not for teaching. Love is not a reward. Love is not something you earn. It's a given, okay? Yes, you love them. Now, not only is it given, though, at the same time it cannot be demonstrated, it can be disproved by the behavior you do demonstrate. And if you don't disprove your love, all of your behavior will prove love, even though you could never earn the love of your children. You see, it's a little difficulty programmed into nature, right? I can walk around all day, touch myself, and think I'm a wonderful person, but I'm going to have to be a certain person to my children. I'm not sure if I am that person. Now, what if I meet a woman and she said, Landon, you're a great father. You're amazing. I see nothing wrong with you whatsoever. Nothing we can improve. I don't think I would want that relationship. But what do I want? A woman who's like, okay, look, I know we've talked about this, but you really shouldn't talk about Jesus that way in front of our children. I don't want someone who's a nag either. Right? We're either or we're not. And I don't think a lot of people, including myself, really know how to be that. Because to me, like, a woman who just gets horny is not the mother of my children. I understand that women get horny. I understand that, as I've said earlier, that women sometimes get very excited by me. And in a way that I didn't finish saying from probably 45 minutes ago, as I just learned to maybe put words to emotions in my early 20s. Not that I didn't have emotions, particularly sad ones, actually, that were some of the more poignant, I think. There wasn't an environment where people asked you how you felt. So a long story short, you know, by the time I'm writing my first novel and making a movie on it, you know, that's probably the most feeling that I've ever put into words. And if I told you the plot in the book and so forth, it would sound pretty silly, but there are actually some pretty advanced themes. Everything that I wrote and did reflected on family psychology. my brain was such a good mirror, such a good recorder of the world, that the art I was producing was, in my first book, my first film when I was 17, 18 years old, was about being an orphan, being an adoptive native boy, and a parallel world, as it were, when similar problems were being endured under even more precipitous circumstances, put into the guise of government testing of siblings who, due to various pharmaceutical inquisitions into their flesh and blood, become psychotic and sociopathic. But their brother follows them to this planet and still loves them, but understands that on Earth they're pretty much just a serial killer who has absolutely no compunction about picking you up, giving you a ride, and putting you in a hole somewhere. So it's really quite a huge range. And I actually featured my parents in a movie about being orphaned by my parents, 17, 18 years old. And nobody's smart enough to see what I'm doing. I'm actually creating an epiphanic satire, right? This is an art that travels through time. Why? Because this is why you put your blood into your books, people. Because your blood is of the sun and it's epiphanic. Your blood has millions of senses. Look, a perfect skipping stone. Right? And the blood is very creative. It helps create illusion in your body, in a sense. Sometimes more because it chooses to than anything. So I had acne because my blood was poisoned. And it had to find a way to put the poison, but also to let people know, you poisoned me. And sure enough, when my dad saw my acne, he became very angry. He got up. Wow, that was actually pretty fun. He got up. Oh, sorry, he didn't get up. He told me to go to the bathroom and just get that thing off your face. He was angry. And it was the other side of the face of the place that he'd hit me. Right? In the left side of my face. So the really biggest one, the lesion, was on the opposite cheek. Right? Flying away from my father, but also telegraphing a tremendous insult to my blood and to my hormonal system, combined with the chronic terror of going to school, a place basically filled with the Agent Orange of male development, female estrogen. Right? Now, most people, I understand this, have no idea what I'm saying, because as per a point I was making an hour and 45 minutes ago, in ways you might not be able to predict, a predator never speaks. It's amazing how many people who may not understand that they are part of a system for the same reason they can't understand and don't want to understand what I'm saying. Remember, I'm not saying this is one person or one gender. This isn't this conspiracy about lizards. Royalty, and they do run the world, and they own it. They don't just own it on paper. They own it through means of particularly theatrical and legal oppression of you, your family, for generations. And we've learned, and we've grown up in various societies around the world to basically internalize it, accommodate it. We teach each other how to get by. We might as well be in a global Auschwitz, but we've made it into a country. You know, it's wonderful. You know, children are dying at the age of 6 from diabetes, but that's okay, right? And it just becomes part of the logistical cost, the collateral damage of the modern invention of you and what you mean and what you should do. I mean, how many choices do you really have? Compared to the average dung beetle, compared to the average rabbit. The average hummingbird has a better life than most humans. The average dairy cow or meat cow has a more enjoyable life eating grass every day than you do, who might never write a poem, never decide that your whole life is about making stained glass windows, you know, or walking in the country and composing odes to the heavens and back the whip upon any human law or convention that strikes against the very spirit of what a man is supposed to be. What the fuck are you going to do with your time, hey? You're on the earth. Worth fucking money. I hope to fucking Lord Jesus it ain't. Right? You have to have some spirit. It's not just running a fucking marathon. It's not something that fits onto your iPhone or a picture on Facebook. Do you think I'm going to take a picture and go, hey, this is me walking around talking to myself, composing odes to the human spirit? that can divide the unwieldy claims upon our sacred flesh and blood, also called time. And it's connected subjectively and objectively in ways that form a symbiosis that is not, though we seem to live as though it is, one plagued with mutual annihilation. Okay, man, that's just a word salad. Pour some hollandaise sauce on that, and you've got yourself a life. And you get these comments on you like, do you have any idea who you're fucking listening to? Take a moment to think about that, okay? Homework assignment. Who the fuck are you listening to? What the fuck am I? What and who am I? What is in my voice? Hey? What do you think's in my voice? Take a moment to think about it. I'm going to think about it. I'm going to enjoy answering my own question. But I want you to enjoy it too. I want you to compliment yourself by guessing what kind of person you're listening to. Right? In a world where we have stages where people could become teapots, train wrecks, train killers, attack helicopters, genders, plane foils, airfoils, victims, predators, police, politicians, corrupt politicians, heroes, spiders, ducks, geese, dinosaurs, you name it. What can I be? What character in the world am I? Then, what am I? What am I not? What do I don't want to be? What do you not want to be? Right? So one thing I am is the voice of man. Another thing I am, and a lot of the same thing, is the sun. That's right, the sun in the sky. Why could I be the sun? Answering that question would help you listen to me as one of the voices of the sun. The voice of my son, and perhaps the only son that matters to me. The son of my own flesh and blood. Because, you know, we warm the whole fucking world. Right? And you could say the same thing. Let's face it, you can only really talk as equals. No, in the sanctity of the law of man and of the son of this earth is above any other man. You believe that, right? You must fucking believe that. Right? Do not tremble before that law. Right? You'll be judged by that. You'll be judged as an equal of the earth and the clouds and the stars. And don't worry that you should stand equal to such a heaven and such an earth. Don't you fear at all in this way that you may need to fear the world and how it judges you. These feeble, retarded gorillas somehow judging the Son of Man. Okay? When do you sit back and think, how do I measure a man who speaks with the voice of the King of the world? How would I know if I heard him? And why could I hear him but that I was his equal in terms absolutely sacred to your own flesh and blood and your own family? If you need to translate, go right ahead. But do you kill people who speak a different language instead of translating it into your language? Oh, you speak Japanese, I'm going to kill you. I don't understand what you're saying. I'm going to kill you. Is that what your ancestors did? There's a deer. Hi. Thank you. Is that what you do when you go to a different part of the world and people seem to behave differently? Do you kill them? Do you say they're just, oh, you're just speaking gibberish out of your mouth? Or do you have the fucking modesty, this self-respect to say, if I'm going to get something out of this place and time and not be fucking evil to this man's heaven, to come to another man's heaven and spread nothing but fucking evil because you don't think you deserve heaven and you've got a terminal illness called being a good fucking human being. Right? You'll crack so many brain cells to lift so many beers, but you won't crack the effort that it takes to listen to me. You won't crack through some of your unnecessary illusions, ones that are even making you sick and killing you, because you think I'm the problem. That's what your happy little parasitic mind has decided, right? I'm the bad one. I'm your enemy, right? You've decided that. You've projected that onto me, onto a king of the world. What does the king of the world look like? Leonardo DiCaprio in the Titanic? Hey? Sean Connery in the Presidio? What? I don't think he's in that movie, but anyway. Beautiful deer. Just coexisting with me. We're just coexisting. Isn't that great? I'm going to go walk this way, away from the deer. So I said, I haven't seen a deer around here. Now I get to see them. They showed themselves to me. It's like a hind, right? They came out of the ethers to see me. That's because the call went out in my blood, nature's blood. And she said, here is one of my deer, the people of the deer. And that deer shared a better energy with me than all the fucking white people in this town over the last 20 years. Do you know that? Are you hearing what I'm saying? Do you see who's talking to you? The paths of the deer are a lot more healthy than most of the jobs people do every day because they're the paths of the sun. Let your occupations be the paths of the sun, right? But how do you know if you don't know your own voice? That's what I learned. How does your senses and your blood really extend them to the environment? How do you can be a natural person sitting in a jail cell if you can find a way to extend your blood to the surrounding environment. You're not speaking to God, you're speaking to the earth around you. You're speaking to the sun and stars. And maybe the warden will be a little easier on you, and no one will have to know why. But you better not tell anyone that you have a voice. And it doesn't mean that you get to sign a ballot to decide what kind of gruel you get next week, because you get to decide your own fucking destiny. Hard as it may be, triumphal as it will be, if you tread the path of the deer, the path of your blood. Because before you had a heart, you had blood. And that blood came from a stone, right? That blood came from a... And that story contains in the sound made when you hit a stone, and you kick a stone, and you throw a stone, and you bang a stone with a branch. And you can make that as sacred as you want. But that sound opens up the sound of creation. And in the space created, the temple created by that sound, you may hear some of the most pleasant things you've ever heard. I've heard the voices of my children, right? Saying, Daddy, you deserve love too. One of the first things one of my ancestors did when they passed away, I didn't know that well, but I did sacred ceremony because my heart cares. Even though I'm an isolated, I care about all of my family. I am a king. A king cares about his flesh and blood. Or not, right? Because you need it. You might need to get thousands away, but you still need it, right? It's not your fault. It may not even be their fault. Sometimes you need your family, but you still need them. You need them in ways that you first needed the sun and stars and the meaning of your own mind when it was afforded the power of your own voice, right? And do not tremble that you hear the voice of the king, for it is no than thine own. That is all you can know because I said something. The knowledge I have to share, it's all the knowledge you have to share. And it's just so strange that the so-called knowledge of this world never really wants to hear what you have to say. Isn't that odd? It doesn't mean the knowledge is wrong, but it's always going to be insufficient. It's going to be a lubricant for the inevitable violence that will take place in the cult that it has to be possessed by to remain in such an ungrown and immature state in its every incarnation. It's amazing to me when people or doctors who write books who don't talk about their own life, don't talk about oppression, don't talk about negative financial instruments. It's like someone talking about biology and never mentioning living cells. We have created a world with financial instruments. How can you write a book about knowledge to do with the world that doesn't talk about what's created? The humanist substance of the world is the debt and the torture of the flesh and blood of man, which is called the dollar. Right? You know that? That's what a dollar is. But they'll never do that. But it's obvious all around you. Unless you go into a suspension of disbelief and say, hey, it's a good world. I get little bliss when I hear the song on the radio that makes me go, yeah, I'm going to work, putting in extraordinary amounts of money, flesh and blood, into my car, even though it could run thousands of miles on just a small tank. Oh, I'm so happy to live in this world. You know how much you're being used every day, right? One car should be able to drive thousands of miles on a tank of gas. Do you understand? It can do that. It is originally designed to do that. Okay? But you don't get to buy those cars. There are royalty driving around the world who probably never even have to fill up a gas tank. And the cars you pay so much more, you don't even own, except in your own mind. You don't even own them as much as the native man owns the bear and the dolphin. And yet you killed all the native people who could tell you how to kind of improve your standards of what it means to own something yourself, and to be able to control yourself and have true manners. That you could walk to any village, people like me and you could walk to any village, shoved, handicapped, bagged, abducted, whatever, taken to any village of, earthy people in the world, get on okay. They'd look in our eyes and go, oh, you are a mighty white man. You, precious female, come with us. they would respect you. You know why? They don't need a passport. You just need your blood. They can smell you. They know everything. They have the judgment of the Son of Man. Welcome, come on. Or they'd be really say, you have many diseases. We will put you in a special hut. The lock is for your protection as well as ours. And they'd have you fasting for like 300 days and learning how to not be a shit weevil. Because, there's a book called Mutant Message Down Under, and this white author is delivering the Aborigines. And for like, I don't know how many weeks, they have animals following them because she smells like a dead carcass. The fat and the crap coming out of the fatty tissue. Right? Nature thinks of her as a dead body because you live in a world that treats you like one. Right? And it comes at the level of thought. You got your food, you got all this, but if you in yourself have accepted through many forms of witchcraft your own death by birth, guess what your body's going to develop like? You're going to develop like a dead person. That's why people often move around like demons. They move around like zombies. Why do we believe in zombies? Because in the body language we like to deny, except when we're going into a movie, to release and to add suspension of disbelief in a kind of chemical cocktail that allows us to see little tiny slips of the truth and not ever sustain any compunctions about never learning anything new. Right? That people move like they're dead because they're treated like they're dead. They move and behave like vampires and narcissists because they're oppressed. And they become something not as human as we might like them to be. We might not want to suffer too many occupations that lead us to confront such a thing because we're going to become bitter, isolated freaks. Because there's a lot to deal with. Right? I'm standing here in this forest, not as scared as I normally am, saying that when I'm by myself in the temple of truth, and you say, oh, you go to the temple of truth. I go spend a lot of time by myself and smoke weed, and I live with my mother. I have, in a sense, a very cushy little life. And I don't have to go to a regular job, you might say, right? Cash a welfare check every month. Bitch about my problems, you would say, okay. And I come out to the temple of truth, a therapeutic way of life, to be sure. And when this is what's on your lips, and days where you might just be angry all day. I came home yesterday and I was like, I feel just as angry as when I started. Fuck. But to have a kind of knowledge about how shock works, things that shock us, things that make us angry. And then to be able to come out today and say, look, this is still difficult material. And it is hard to bear that when I'm in the temple of truth, this is what's coming out of me. This feels like where I come from. I come from shock. Wow. How can you come from shock? Well, because everyone else does too. Guess what that leads to? You don't have to watch, Vietnam movies from the 1980s as they dealt with various types of PTSD, including Chuck Norris going back to Vietnam, jumping off some giant turret with 2 grenades, flipping them open with his thumbs. As a child, I became galvanized by this image, this preview, jumping off with a bandana around his head and throwing the grenades down at the guards and somehow not being exploded himself. Amazing, Chuck. I was like, kill those kooks, And you never really felt bad about the Vietnamese so much as you felt really good for Chuck Norris. And, it's like, what does this have to do with reality? Well, it has to do with PTSD, really. These characters are living out magical fantasy realms where they get to vent off their rage and their shock in a completely fantastical theatrical realm, which is the realm that you're being conditioned to and by, because that's the purpose of theater itself, to exploit and to help loosen your inhibitions and to allow certain things to be communicated that you also lose the inhibition to really want to be all that aware of, because it's just entertainment and you've been programmed to believe that millions and millions of hours at a time. I never look at a video game, a logo, or any second of any media without going, what is the fucking message here? And how is it being compounded, and could be, by someone knowledgeable of the syntax of dominion and control at the level of witchcraft and the subconscious? And that's how I learn. I study their work. It's an incredible creation. Saturn's World, you might say. They should have a video game called Saturn's World. And it starts off with children playing a video game. But all of a sudden, I watch this weird guy's video. It's like, I don't want to play it the same way anymore. I want to look at this differently. Let's videotape ourselves playing. Our pulse rate and respiration. Let's think about how an exam, taking a hard for ethics and personality development, 5 minutes after finishing 1,000 hours of gameplay. You know, you can actually do these things yourself, but nobody ever does because you don't even care enough to experiment. You're like, oh, it's cool, right? If you think about your brain, if your parents have really taught you anything, if your teachers had been anything more than pedophiles, you would understand what I'm saying and why I'm saying it. Because it's smack right in the center of the entire realm of human communication and what's called the standards of signs, signaling systems. As much as you are never taught that you're being relieved of having your innate knowledge of how to preserve the full sanctity of your flesh and blood and brain. The first subject that any so-called teacher should want to demonstrate competence with is the nature of signaling systems. Okay? So think about the world that you're living in. Think about the competence of your teachers. And think about my competence. Right? And I don't have to be an expert in any subject in the world, and nor do you, to be as competent as I. Competent enough to speak with the sun and stars, to speak in belly, and to develop uterus and testicles, because your blood made it so, right? And when you get menstrual cramps, your blood is making that so. Something painful is being created by your body because something painful has happened to your body. And there might be a painful amount of unwanted claims upon your body and upon your father's body. That, along with finding those things, you might find out you're a little upset about how your wonderful mother and father seem to have treated your time in commending you to people who might not, but get paid to take all of it from you, as though you were born dead at birth with no time of your own, except the hours measuring out, like the sun itself, your death. Because eventually you're going to get big and fat and red and kill everybody who once thought you were the source of all life. What does that sound like? So you start to get the idea of the world that you live in. Okay, here we go. I've been really intensely talking for a long time. I guess it's just one of those days. I'm gonna have this. Oh yeah, I took a crap. Okay, that was good. My mom's healthy, dog's healthy. I haven't been this secure for a long time. I'm really enjoying this island today. This is kind of just my first lap of the island. I think I'm a little lost. Hold it. Let's see, I think this is the one way. Oh, maybe not. There's always a little threat of danger around me. I think just the sum tide of human beings and my interaction with them leads me to believe that I'm not, in many respects, nearly as safe as I like to think I am on any given day. But nor am I particularly unsafe either. I'm going to go see if my pentagram is still here. You know, I forgot all about that until just now. I'm so busy talking. But I made this pentagram yesterday, and I got the taste of my mother's milk in my mouth at the age of 50. Pretty nice birthday present, eh? So it gives you an idea of, in my philosophy, what my voice has brought about in terms of the creation of large pentacles in the forest and how they affect my brain, right? So letting a level of nourishment come into my brain that has a staggering provenance in some of the first days of my life in the body.